Hi everybody, this is a continuation of your French Revolution notes. Today we're going to talk about the birth of the French Republic and also what happens to Robespierre and the radicals that take over the French Revolution. So in 1792, the French Republic is born. The country has its first constitution that allows for democratic rule. And this is going to shift all political power to the National Assembly. They're going to allow for universal male suffrage, which means that all men in the Republic of France are allowed to vote regardless of whether or not they own property. And they're going to reform several key aspects of the French society. First of all, they're actually going to abolish slavery in France and in all French territories, which is a big deal because they're doing that well in advance of the United States. They're also going to push for educational reforms to allow more people to get educated. And because of all the economic problems that had caused the revolution, they're going to try to get price controls in place that will allow them to make sure that things like bread and other necessities are affordable to the people of France. One of the major debates of the French Revolution is whether or not the country can move forward if the king and queen are still alive. And there's going to be a major debate over this in the National Assembly. So the Jacobins, who are the radicals, these are the people who are the most extreme in their views, they end up winning this debate. And in their argument, the revolution cannot be successful if the king is still alive. So Louis XVI is actually put on trial for treason. And part of the reason that they're putting him on trial is because A, he had tried to escape the country and abandon the revolution, but B, he had been communicating secretly with foreign countries like Austria asking for help and asking for them to invade France to relieve pressure on him. And this is treasonous. This is an act of rebellion against your own country. And so for that, he's found guilty, and he's publicly executed by guillotine in January of 1793. So with the king out of the picture, the National Assembly is now going to hold all of the power politically, rather than sharing power with the king as they had done before. During this period, there is a lot of paranoia. There's a lot of concern that the revolution may not go in the right direction now that the king is gone. And so this period becomes known as the Reign of Terror. The National Assembly is going to form a special committee of public safety to make sure that people remain loyal to the revolution. The goal is to protect the revolution from its enemies, but the problem is that it's too easy to label someone an enemy of the revolution. And so anybody that the Jacobins don't like, anybody that might criticize the leadership of the revolution could potentially become labeled an enemy. And if you're labeled an enemy of the revolution, nothing good's going to come of that because it's pretty much a death sentence. Robespierre ends up becoming very powerful during this time period as the leader of the Jacobins, and he pretty much becomes a dictator. During the Reign of Terror, over 40,000 people are sentenced to death by guillotine. It becomes a public spectacle. And it's really a witch hunt. A lot of the people who are being accused of disloyalty, they're being accused based on false accusations or false information, and there's not very much of a way for them to prove that they're innocent. And so many innocent people end up dying during the Reign of Terror. As the bloodshed continues to get worse and worse, some members of the revolution actually start questioning whether Robespierre is fit to lead this revolution anymore. And so one of his associates, Danton, actually accuses him of going too far with this Reign of Terror. And as a result of that criticism, of course, Robespierre turns on Danton and accuses him of being an enemy of the revolution and sentences him to death for disloyalty. So here we've got a situation where revolutionaries are killing other revolutionaries, right? So the revolution is starting to turn on itself. So when Danton goes to the guillotine before he's executed, he says to Robespierre and to the executioners, "Be sure to show them my head, it's well worth seeing." And this is kind of a way of saying, if he's willing to kill me, somebody who's very close to him and a part of the revolution, he's willing to kill anyone. So take notice, this guy has gone too far. During this time period, a woman named Charlotte Corday is so dismayed with everything that's going on here that she feels the only way to actually stop the terror is to do something radical herself. And so she believes part of the terror has been caused by the propaganda that's being spread through the press, through Jean-Paul Marat's newspaper. And so she actually sneaks in on him and stabs him, kills him, hoping to silence the propaganda coming out of his press. But it ends up backfiring, and the people start to look at Marat, the publisher, as a martyr, as somebody who died as a hero, trying to push his beliefs and trying to stand up for his beliefs, and Charlotte Corday ends up being executed for killing him. So this is really just a story of death after death after death, one assassination causing another execution. It's really overwhelmingly bloody. So the next of the big figures to fall is going to be Marie Antoinette. She's also arrested. She's tried for treason as well and for depleting the treasury. Remember, her nickname early on was Madame Deficit because she spent money without any regard for how it would affect the country. And she's also put to death October of 1793, about a year after her husband. Robespierre continues to lead the revolution, but he grows increasingly paranoid during this time period, and he feels like everybody is starting to turn on him, or there's always plots against him. Here are some images of the use of the guillotine. There are paintings, there are sketches of this all throughout French culture at this time period. And again, these are public executions, so everybody sees them, and it has an effect of striking fear in the hearts of people that if they're not loyal to the revolution, that they could be next. So sooner or later, karma is going to catch up to Robespierre. He starts to really make some pretty odd changes within French society. So the first one is that to try to further remove the influence of the Catholic Church from the French society, he actually goes to work at rewriting a calendar for France to exclude Sundays from the calendar, so that there's 6-day weeks instead of 7-day weeks, and that without a Sunday there's no Sabbath day, which means you can't go to church. And so this is seen as a way to remove Catholic influence from French society. That's just a really extreme step, and people within Paris may be okay with it, but the people who live in the countryside are opposed to this. They still want to be religious. They still want to have their religion. And then Robespierre starts reading all these philosophy books and starts getting obsessed about virtues and how the people of the revolution have to have certain virtues and certain qualities. And he starts to think of himself as the perfect person who possesses all of these virtues. He sees himself as a godlike or a saint-like figure, starts wearing togas and staging these public displays and plays where he's worshipped by people, and starts writing new holidays for people to pay tribute to him. He's just completely going mad with his ego and with his power. And so the National Assembly understands that Robespierre has gotten out of hand and that he has to go at this point in order for the revolution to survive. And so Robespierre, who had sentenced all these people to death, who had had all this blood on his hands, is finally captured and executed by guillotine in July of 1794. All right, so what goes around comes around. So now that Robespierre is gone, who is going to lead France? Well, they come up with a new system known as the Directory. And the Directory, according to a new constitution that's written in 1795, is going to be a government that's controlled by the wealthy middle class. And it's going to consist of a 5-man ruling council. And that ruling council is going to work with a 2-house legislature to make the laws. And in a really interesting reversal, in a really interesting move, they end universal male suffrage, which means that now the only people who can vote are the people who own property, which is a step backwards. So this looks like a situation where power is being taken from the people and centralized more into the elites. The Directory was also known for using the army to control rebellions and uprisings. So now, if people are trying to rebel against this new government, they're going to use force to stop it. And they're also ignoring the economic problems and the food shortages of the period. So they're not doing much to help the poor people, and that's obviously not going to work. So it doesn't take long for the people to lose confidence in the Directory and look elsewhere for leadership. So that leaves us with the big question: who will save the French Republic? Usually desperate times call for desperate measures, and people are looking for someone to come in and fix things. And the person that they turn to is a revolutionary commander of the army, Napoleon Bonaparte. And so I'm going to stop the lecture notes at this point. You guys are going to read chapter 23, section 3 in your textbook so that you can learn more about Napoleon and what he did to try to get France under control, and also what he did to try to expand France's power. So that's all for today. You'll move on to your textbook reading, and I will check in with you next week.